This is today's business leaders. Actionable advice from real-world professionals. And now here's your host, Gabe Arnold.
All right, today I have a brand new guest on the show, Stacey Howe-Lott, and she is going to share with us a little bit about her tutoring business and how she got started, and a pretty interesting story about how she only worked 100 hours last year and made some pretty decent money, which we'll get into it here in a little bit. And it's a great story because anybody that's either already has a business or wants to start a business, I think time efficiency and profits out of being efficient is a huge thing that we all should improve on. So really excited to hear your story, Stacey, and thanks so much for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Gabe. I'm excited for the opportunity.
Very cool. And so what I ask, I only have one scripted question for my show that I always tell people, and then everything else is just kind of the conversation takes it where we go. But what I always ask is, when did you first realize that you were an entrepreneur?
Great question. And I had no idea I was an entrepreneur. No idea. So I'm a teacher and I have a master's in education, but instead of going into the school system, I went into corporate. So I worked in corporate training divisions for Coca-Cola and Ford Motor Company. And then I got married and wanted to start a family. So I left my career about 15 years in, and came home and started a family because I really thought, okay, that's my next career, being a stay-at-home mom. Yeah. I was home for about 5 minutes and realized, oh my God, no, I can't do this. Because, infants are lovely, but they're not very intellectually stimulating. They're lovely for all sorts of other reasons, but my brain was falling out of my head. And I'd been working all my life. So I decided I got to get back into teaching. So I gave, like 6 months in, I gave the baby to the babysitter, and then got out of the house for an hour a day. And my babysitter made more than I did. So it cost me money every time when I walked out the door, but it was totally worth it. And I started tutoring the little girls in my neighborhood. Mm-hmm. But when you tutor, every kid is has a different teacher. And even though we're in the same school system, in the same school, different teachers are emphasizing different things. So I would have to call the individual teacher and say, okay, I'm working with this kid. How are you teaching this? Because I want to be in line with you and not telling the kid one thing and the teacher's telling the kid the other thing. So it was a ton of work. And teachers, I don't know if your audience knows this or not, you teach during the day and then you go home and your evenings are spent reviewing homework, prepping homework for the next day. I mean, it takes a lot of time. And I only, of course, got paid for the time that I worked with the child. Mm-hmm. And along the way, people were saying, well, do you tutor the SAT? I was like, well, no, but, I took the SAT in high school, and how hard could it be? I mean, I got into college, so I must have done pretty well. So I thought, I'll tutor the SAT. So I trot myself down to the bookstore and grab the, book on the SAT, and I take the math section. And apparently I was not aware of how much math I'd actually forgotten. I mean, like, lines have formulas and circles have formulas. I had just not known all this stuff I had forgotten because, as an adult, I don't calculate the slope of a line. So I just tanked the SAT as an adult. And it was a really good intellectual challenge. And I needed something when I'm rocking the baby, up in the middle of the night, like all of that. I was home. I had to do something anyway. So I taught myself all the math. And I went and got the books, like everyone does, right? You go and get the books and they're terrible. I was like, wait a minute, this is bad. And then I went to go work for some of the companies that teach the SAT thinking, well, maybe they have it better. No, they don't. So I was like, I can do a better job than this because, this is pathetic. So I started teaching the SAT and I knew I could do a better job because I was a teacher. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, I did. Most companies have 30 and 60-hour programs. And now I work with kids for about 5 to 7 hours on average. And my kids get the same or better results.
Wow.
And that's just good teaching, right? That's not me in particular, I don't think, but that's what good teaching can actually do and being a test expert. So that's how I fell into it. And I didn't mean to become an entrepreneur. And I didn't even know, it was a couple of years in before I realized, I'm actually, I've got a separate bank account and then I have a business and, then I have a website, and, now I have a VA and it continually amazes me because I think I'm the worst business person in the world, but I'm a really good teacher. And that knowing I was a good teacher made learning all the other business lessons as I, fell off the cliff and ran into walls, it made it easier because I knew I was really good at my job, even though I don't know how to hook up my, bloody website hook things. So I kind of fell into entrepreneurship, but I love it. And it's allowed me to build a business around the needs of my family. And it's portable. My parents are retired and travel, so my daughter and I will occasionally travel with them. And my kids, my students, I just teach from wherever. I just need an internet connection, so I can teach from wherever. And it was important to me. I was able to time shift. So I live on the West Coast. And after school and in evenings, I'm with my family, and that's when tutors work, after school and evenings. But I didn't want to do that. Yeah. So the bulk of my clientele is out of the East Coast and international, because then my afternoons are their evenings and late nights. So it works out that way, and that working online allowed me to do that. So I see a couple kids locally, but the vast majority of my business is outside of my own time zone.
Very cool. Well, lots of really, really interesting and useful information what you shared. One of the things that stands out to me is you're like, well, I didn't realize I was an entrepreneur, but you were really good at teaching, and you went out and looked in the marketplace, and you're like, wow, all this stuff sucks. It doesn't work well, and it's not producing results. And I can't believe you have to, with the traditional programs, you said you have to do 30 hours or whatever. That's a huge, huge, huge time commitment and cost, I'm sure. Everybody needs to get paid. And then it sounds like, in a sense, you basically went in and re-engineered it and said, we can do this in 5 or 6 hours. So you cut it down to, 20% of what everybody else does, which is huge.
It's amazing. With a good teacher, it just doesn't take that long.
Yeah.
And if anyone else had done even a remotely okay job, I wouldn't have become an entrepreneur. But there was nothing it was so pathetic what was out there. I'm like, wow, even though I can't do graphics and my website's blurry because I don't know how to make an image, but I know I can do a better job. I know that I can. And the bar was so low in terms of quality of teaching materials. Right. Not in qualities of marketing materials, right? They're eating my lunch with their marketing materials. But in quality of teaching, being able to get results, I knew I could do it.
Yeah.
So if you look around and say, why? There's this huge problem. People should be doing it like this, but they're doing it like that, and no one else is stepping up. You're the one to step up and solve that problem.
That's exactly right. And the other piece of it that's really interesting to me is no amount of marketing can sell a bad product. But a good product, it can sell it, but it won't stick and it won't make happy customers. But a good product comparatively needs no marketing. Not, you should always market. I'm not going to say but that's what really stands out to me is you're doing extremely well because instead of just following the same path and doing what the industry's been doing, you're I'm going to introduce something that's actually super valuable, works better, takes less time. You just blew out the competitors' products. You're not a competitor to them in a sense. You're in a different league. You're in the blue ocean.
Yes, I was just going to say that exactly. Do people know Blue Ocean? Have you talked?
I don't know if we've talked about it a ton, but everybody should read the Blue Ocean.
Deliberately in the Blue Ocean. So in my business, first of all, it's filled with snake oil salesmen, right? Yes. Everyone and their dog says, "Oh, I can teach the SAT," and then what the big companies do is they do big marketing materials, and parents have to sign up and lay down, $1,000, $2,000 for the program. Up front, they have to lay down that money. And then if their kid doesn't like it, they don't get their money back. They're like, well, if your kid doesn't do well, you can take the class again. Why? Wait a minute. It didn't work the first time. Why would I schlep my kid here again and again? Wow. It makes no sense.
Yeah.
And what they do is if you go on Craigslist, you'll see those companies advertising for warm bodies. Mm-hmm. I think you need to have a college degree, but you don't need to know how to teach, and you don't need to be a test tech. press expert, and they say they fix that. Well, I've been there, I've looked behind the curtain, and I mean, they're very nice people, but they're not effective people.
Yes.
And like if someone doesn't know how to teach, they just say it louder. Maybe you didn't hear me. Let me just repeat it louder, and then you'll get it. And the teacher doesn't do that. If a kid doesn't get it, you take another tact, right? Like saying it louder doesn't make a difference. So what I do with my kids, right, I've got 400 different ways of saying the thing. So if a kid doesn't get it one way, we'll just try a different way until the kid gets it. That's a teaching skill. So I came into a market where it was very flashy, and other companies, they have people available 24 hours. Anytime your kid wants training, we've got people, and all this stuff. And I come in and I'm a mom, I have limited hours, and I don't know how to do anything technical at all. And I decided to turn that to my advantage. Mm-hmm. So all over my website, you see that I'm a mom. And I say, you know what, I answer all the phone calls. I teach, I write every blog post. I teach every class. If your kid sends me an email, I'm the one that responds. It is always me. It's just me. But that's an advantage versus calling, interacting with the other company, and you don't get the expert teachers.
Yeah.
The other thing I did is other companies sell packages, and it's pretty common online, right? You have to sign up for,
right,
5 sessions or something. But I don't do that because technically I didn't know how to do that. And I also don't bill ahead of time. Mm-hmm. I just bill afterwards because that makes more sense to me. And no one does that, right? Never online can you actually get the thing and then later, pay for it afterwards. But I thought, well, that's just going to work better for me. So I do that, and I turn it into a marketing advantage. Yeah. So on my website, I say, you know what, you can't buy a package from me. I only work by the hour, because if I don't earn your business each and every time, you shouldn't hire me. So your only investment is 1 hour. And then if you like what I do and you like the results that you're getting with your child, you can buy another hour. And and why wouldn't everyone do that? I totally stand behind my work, and I'm totally willing to earn it hour by hour, and I do. Mm-hmm. And my parents really respond to that. Like, they're like, wow, I'm going to try you out, and if I don't like you, I'm not on the hook for $1,000 or $2,000. Yeah. And I have to, and I know why people do packages, right? Because you want to lock people in, you want to get that recurring revenue on your books. Mm-hmm. But in my business, that's not serving the parents. Mm-hmm. So it works better for me to say, look, I'll just earn your business hour by hour, and you can decide how many sessions you want to purchase, right, or not. You're totally up to you.
No, that's brilliant. And you said something really key. You said the other model didn't serve the parents, and you walk in and you're like, I want to serve the parents and obviously the students, and with that attitude, everything works.
And teachers first, so parents, I don't know how many hours your kids will need. Most of my kids I work with, between 2 and 10 hours, average around 5 or 7. Some kids I work with 15. That's the unusual circumstance, and there's reasons behind that. Some kids I work for an hour and we're done. Right. Yeah. So I don't know. Once I get in there with your kid in a session or two, I can kind of say, aha, here's where the scores are going. We've got some insight. I'm expecting, like 3 more sessions, or I'm expecting actually 1 more session and we'll be done. I'm a teacher first. Mm-hmm. And so I want what's serving the kid. I mean, I work for the kid. I mean, the parents pay the bill, but my job is to get the kid where we need him to be. And then if we're done, then I'll tell the parent, we're done. We're done. No more sessions. We're done. Your kid is ready to go. And that's really worked well for me. And I'm in a business where personal referral is very important, and integrity is really important. Like, you Google if you need your car washed or your car repaired, but you don't Google for someone to hand your kid off to. You call your right, you call your buddies, or you call your mom friends, right? You call people and say, I'm looking for a really great tutor that I need them to be like this to work with my kid. Yeah. So I work on referral. Now, I need to up my marketing game, absolutely. but I'm very clear that if I do my job and deliver great results and really take care of my kids, everything
else works. Yeah.
I'm a horrible marketer. Like, the worst possible marketer on the planet, and I still managed to, have a profit at the end of the year, which is amazing.
Yeah, and it's just testament to building a product that actually solves a problem, or building a service that actually solves a problem. And a question I have, because I've met and known a lot of teachers, and I've met good ones and bad ones, but yeah, I don't think that every quote unquote teacher out there would say what you said to me earlier. Like, if you're not getting it, it's not that I need to talk louder. I need to find one of the other 400 ways to explain it to you so that you get it. Well, is that what they really teach teachers to do? Because I don't always get that perception from what I hear.
That's very possible. I'm a fourth generation teacher, so it is bred into my bones.
Okay, that makes more sense.
It's literally in my DNA. And so teaching, apparently I lined up my stuffed animals in my crib, and then as soon as my brothers were born, I made them do school, and like they hate to this day. They're not happy about that. But I have been teaching since the moment I could talk. Okay. And so have all the other people in my family. They're either doctors, lawyers, engineers, or teachers, and I fell into the teacher camp. So that's very much how I see teaching. So, for example, and I think this applies to marketing, right?
Yeah.
Telling people, you need to buy my product, right? Give me money, I'll give you this thing, it's going to solve your issue.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily move people to buy. In the exact same way, telling a kid, if you just read the question, you could figure out the answer. So, where's the magic here? Read the bloody question. Kids don't read the questions, right? They kind of fly through it, but they don't read it. For example, one question says, I'm simplifying it, but one question says, if you square a number, what happens? And really what the question literally says is, for a number between 0 and 1, if you square it, what happens? But the kids miss the between 0 and 1 part, and they're like, well, duh, if you square a number, it gets larger. Like, what idiot doesn't know that? And so I kept telling kids, and when I started out, I'm like, you should read the question, right? If you just read the question, it'd be fine. My kids wouldn't read the question. So I told them a story. When my little girl was in kindergarten, I had to send lunch with her to school. So she was sitting up at our counter, and I was feeding her breakfast. And I was, turned to the fridge. I'm like, baby, what do you want today for your lunch? And she said, Mama, can I have anything? And I said, baby, of course, you can have anything you want. What would you like? And she says, Mama, I want an elephant in my lunch today. She was 5.
Right.
And I said, well, first of all, we don't eat elephants. And second of all, when I said you can have anything, what I meant anything in my refrigerator. I did not mean anything on the planet. And just like that, on the SAT, when they say, hey, what happens when any number, they don't mean any number. They mean what is in your refrigerator. So when it says what happens to a number, you have to go to the refrigerator and see what numbers are in there. So now when kids read the question, they say, oh, what happens to a number when you double it? They're like, well, let me open my refrigerator and see if there's an elephant in there. Oh, look, the number has to be between 0 and 1. And when you raise it, double a fraction, when you increase a fraction, that actually lessens the number. When you square a fraction, it goes down, it doesn't go up. So telling kids that story sunk the action into their head, right? So now my kids remember the elephant story, and they'll come back and say, yep, I hit an elephant question where I had to look up and look in my refrigerator, and I got it right because I took the time to read the question and realize, oh, yep, here's the tricky part about the numbers.
Brilliant.
So that's that's a teaching skill, right? That is not a math skill, because seriously, if you just read the question, I swear, everyone would double their SAT scores. Just read the question. But telling them
maybe that's not how our brains work.
It doesn't work. So you have to tell stories, and I think that works in marketing too, right? You can't say buy my product. You have to paint the picture at the end of which, like, oh my God, I need to give you my money so I can have the product, so that story will live in my life.
You are 1,000,000% right on that. Have you ever read Story Brand by Donald Miller?
It is on. I have a list of about 20 books on my nightstand, and it's about 4th from the bottom.
Move it to the top. Move it to the top, okay? You absolutely, because you already get it, and you said, like in the beginning, like you're not the technical person or the marketing person. You don't have to be. You already know everything you need, and if you read that, you're like, oh yeah. You'll breeze through it. And there's a cool little model that you could use for teaching your kids, for marketing, for whatever, and there's a free piece of software that would build your stories for you. It's so cool. It's amazing.
That's really, okay, I will look into that. And what's funny is I take all kids. Some tutors take, the A and the B kids to get, to take an A kid to an A plus kid, it's a pretty short trip.
Right.
To take a C and D kid up to an A, that's a much longer trip. But I take all kids. And I had a point with that, and I totally lost my point.
I've been losing my questions too, because I'm super interested.
Telling stories. A story brand. Okay, lost it. Maybe it'll come back.
That's right. Yeah. But I've learned after reading. I just very recently read that book. After, I forget if I read it or one of my brothers read it and recommended me, because I have a big family. I have 5 younger brothers and an older sister, and we're all entrepreneurs or working for the other entrepreneurs, siblings.
Awesome.
Which is kind of cool. But after reading that, and then after reading a book by Russell Brunson called Expert Secrets, he's the founder of ClickFunnels, which if you or anybody else watching hasn't read him, they should check that out. I forget if Russell took it from StoryBrand or from somewhere else, but because there's a theme in writing movies that everybody uses. There's a progression that every single successful movie ever uses. And so they break it down in both of those books, actually. And the reason that story is powerful is because it gives us like very explicit visual things to remember, whereas obviously like zeros and ones and characters on a page are not that eventful. It's not very exciting. It's hard to remember.
I would say story is how we learned, right? And if you look now, if you have children, you'll see stories is how they learn. Like we don't tell children, don't go into the woods, right? Because they're like, oh my God, I'm totally going to go into the woods. Now that you said that, I'm like all over going into the woods. You tell them the story of Hansel and Gretel, right? So if you look culturally, truly, stories is how we convey our values. Story is how we pass down information. I think story is how we learn, and it's hardwired into us.
Yeah.
My daughter watching my daughter grow as an infant, she would tell stories, and it would be so interesting because she would talk to her Tigger at night and like kind of narrate her day. And it wasn't like a factual narration. It was a story, it involved unicorns and fairies, but you could hear her, how she's taking her information and turning it into stories to understand it. So yes, stories is how we learn.
And you're totally right. And so after I've watched other marketers do this, I've watched other business owners and speakers and things like that do it, but I didn't understand why they did it. And then after understanding it more, and even the way you're explaining is you even get it way more. That's why I asked that question about how you teach 400 different ways. Once you get it and you use it, you're like, oh, this is so much better. This is such a better way to serve people. So in my last one of the last webinars that I did, instead of teaching like the intricate details of how Facebook ads platform works, I said at the end of the webinar, I'm giving you all the tools and resources for that. There's going to be a bunch of YouTube videos that you can watch so you can follow, pause, step by step. It is a skill you're going to have to learn, but it's secondary to understanding the premise and the concept of what you're trying to accomplish. So in story, I explained how targeting works, and I explained how people screw up targeting. And everybody will remember that forever.
Yes, that's so brilliant. Because also the steps to the buttons we push to accomplish that, the buttons are going to change.
Right.
Facebook changes
exactly. It'll change tomorrow. Exactly.
Yeah. And so something that's always struck me for teaching is my job isn't to teach kids how to build a ship. My job is to teach kids how to long for the sea. So if I teach them how to long for the sea, everything else will fall out. So I'm really clear that if I can, right, which I think is what you were saying, right? Like if you teach them, here's where we're going, here's the big picture, here's the longing for the sea. Now that you've inspired me, and I really want that. Now, yes, you'll help. I can figure out the details, but the details are incidental because you can't teach details without someone wanting to long for the sea, right? No one wants to build a ship if you don't want to go to sea. But if you long for the sea, then you're absolutely committed to building a ship. So I teach kids to long for the sea, and then we just engage in shipbuilding. People ask, how do you get your, so teachers ask, because tutoring, right? We're in the, have to teach tutors all the time on groups that I'm in, how do you get your kids to do your homework? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't understand the question. I say, do your homework.
They all do it.
They all do it. I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with parents not, and they're all saying, how do you get parents to pay? And I'm like, I send them a bill and they pay within 24 hours. Like, that's how that works. So I'm always amazed how teachers, like, there's this disconnect somewhere in there in my teacher groups that they're like, well, I can't get kids to do their homework. My kids, and it's in my policies, right? You get one pass not doing your homework, and the second time I fire you.
Very
and
cool.
teach like you can't fire kids. I'm like, well, actually, you can, actually. So, and over, I think, 7 years, I fired 2 kids.
Well, there's a testament to your system. It works.
Well, right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Of hundreds of kids, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think I'm on
Thousands.
my 1,500.
Oh my
50,
goodness.
I just sent my 1,500 invoice. I was like, wow, I need to blog about that.
Yeah.
Invoice.
That's amazing.
That's a pretty big number. So I've worked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids, and so somehow, like, I was just talking to someone. They're saying, well, you have got to work with all the clients, including the crappy clients. And I agree. When you're starting out, you kind of do cast your net kind of wide.
Yeah.
As you figure out, you're like, oh, I didn't really resonate with that. I really want to resonate more over here, and you just kind of start working your way. Like, it's no good sitting in your head and thinking about it. I really do think you need to be.
Oh, for sure. Try it out.
And kind of refining as you go. And oh my God, we've all had, you're like, I'm never going to work with that type of client again. And we've all worked with those clients that you're like, I should have known up front. Like, why didn't I stop that up front? It was a nightmare. I knew it going in, and I should have stopped it.
Yeah.
So start paying attention and just start wending your way toward the clients that you really resonate with, and those other clients just kind of naturally fall off, and or you get better at saying, yep, I work with you and I don't work with you.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just book me. I mean, you have to call me and I talk to you first. I turn away a lot of business. I get a lot of parents calling saying, my kid is in the 98th percentile and he's got to be in the 99th percentile. So it's like, we're talking
marginal.
Marginal. They got to get a perfect score. They missed 3 questions out of 250.
That's going to happen.
My kid is a wreck, right? Like, this is my kid. I'm going to disown him.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And I'll tell parents I need to. So using technology, because I work with underage children. Mm-hmm. So I always all my videotapes are sent to my parents. All my emails are copied to them. I never interact with their parent, and I'm very conscious of that.
Yeah.
I never interact with an underage child without a parent in the loop somewhere.
Right.
But the one exception I make is to say, I have to talk to your child alone in a private conversation. And if your child convinces me they want to go for a perfect score, I'll play that game with them.
Gotcha.
But if the kids, I've worked with just, I think, 3 or just a handful of kids
that felt it was worth it. Yeah.
Because it's no fun teaching someone to be perfect, because they do an amazing job and then you have to tell them how awful it was. I mean,
That's crazy.
If you want to play the game, it's a fun game to play. But if you don't want to play that game, it's miserable for everyone involved. So I turn away business saying, nope, I do not like working with those. Nope, I'm not going to get into that. I only work with kids who want to work with me. And if they don't, then go find another tutor that will do that. But I'm not playing that. And I won't work with younger kids. Yeah. I get a lot of calls around 7th and 8th graders. And I'm like, no, they should be out playing.
Not doing this stuff. Yeah.
Doing this. So I only work with 11th and 12th graders, and I get 10th grade calls. I just had one yesterday, and I'm like, well, you got to wait till this summer because I'll only work with rising juniors. They've got other things to do. They don't need to be worried about this.
Yeah, and it may not stick if it's too far out. I mean, not that the approach wouldn't work, but that's a long time.
So I think that transition of going from I work with everyone, under all circumstances, to kind of narrowing that up for myself, because I'm most effective. I work in the inner city, and I used to do SAT tutoring in the inner city, but it wasn't a good match because I had kids who were still counting on their fingers and trying to, and they would say, well, no, I can answer a hard SAT question. I'm like, babe, you can't. And I mean, you don't want to look a kid in the face and say, oh my God, no, you can't. I mean, what they needed to be working on wasn't SAT tutoring. It was remedial math tutoring or remedial tutoring. So I did that for about 6 months, and I came home crying every single time. And I finally said, I can't do it. I want to contribute, and I contribute in other ways. We contribute a part of my business income back to Donor's Choice, which is a nonprofit that supports school teachers, public school teachers, in bringing more resources into their classroom.
Nice.
And which my daughter and I love. So every month she sits on my lap and we read through all the needs, and she chooses. We usually choose her grade level. So she chooses the classroom to support, and we donate that portion of that month's income to that. So I support it in other ways, but I realized that's not a good match. It's not a good match of my skills. It's not a good match to their needs. So the more I've been able to narrow in, the more effective I am, the better my kids score, the fewer hours I work, the more money I make. Like, it's better. It's all good, right?
Tons of amazing lessons here. This is awesome. So there's two other things I want to ask you about. One is, if it's okay, you want to share it. Share a little bit more about how much you work and what the results have been income-wise, if you're happy with that, and share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I work. I see between 5 and 10 clients a week. It depends on the week, and so the tests the ACT and SAT are given at certain times during the year. So it's never I never have consistent looking, like other entrepreneurs are like, this is my income and these are my hours, and it doesn't work like that. It's much more cyclical for me. And so I'll have I'll see 12, I'll work 12 hours or 15 hours one week, and that is way too much. I really try and keep it down to 10. And then there's weeks that I'm like, I can't find a client for the life of me, right? So it kind of is, and I've just learned to trust that flow. On average, I work between 5 and 10 hours a week, seeing clients, and I work about 9 months out of the year.
Very cool.
Just with the ebb and flow. So I don't work Christmas. January is a slow month, so I usually don't see clients there. We take a month off in the summer. So it doesn't. It's not just that I work the school year. It doesn't quite work out like that. But nonetheless, I work about 9 months out of the year when you get down to it, and about 5 or 10 hours a week. And I made about $40,000 last year.
Very cool.
But what I thought was really interesting is I took a year off. My family needed me, so I killed my business. I had this, I had 700 people on my list, and I walked. I just took it down.
Wow.
And I'm done. And I walked, and then a year later, I'm like, apparently I'm not done. So I came back. So I started from nothing. That was the year I started from nothing. So 2 years ago, I pulled in a little less than that. I pulled in about 35. No, it was the other way. I pulled in about 45. But I took home 13 out of that. Nice. And this year I made 40, and I took home 25.
Very cool.
So I was like, okay, I'm getting more, right? I'm getting smarter. So I'm really focusing on profitability more than just revenue. I for so long I was focused on top line revenue and wasn't thinking all about profitability. And this year I was like, dude, what is the point? There's no point. At the end of the year, I got nothing. So I really focus on profitability, and that's made a difference.
That's a really good point too. There's a book called Profit First by
Mike McCallowitz.
It's phenomenal. So good. So no wonder you're profitable now.
Read that book. Read that book. And it has so I realized I'm working both to give me something to do, right? Because I love it and I love my students. And I'm also working to bring those blessings back to my family and to allow us to do more than we couldn't have. And it's not, we can't live on my salary, but it's also a nice, we're able to afford some things that we couldn't do.
A second income is huge. And the cool thing is that, you're working the hours you want, 10 hours a week for almost a full-time income for the year. And at the point that you want it to, you have total control. You're basically making $160,000 a year if you wanted to do it full-time.
That's what I tell my husband, and he rolls his eyes. He's like,
No.
I'm not really 6 figures if I wanted to. And he's like, of course you are. But you're right. I mean, I could.
But that's such a cool business model is what I'm saying, is because like for anybody that takes the lessons that you're sharing here today, one is be a good storyteller and be a good teacher because it will help you across the board. And two, like, focus on, what you want to do and be efficient and everything. And the other one is like, make sure your product is phenomenal. If you just took those 3 little pieces, you can run a business for 5 hours a week and make, who wouldn't want to work for 5 hours a week to make 40 or 50 grand a year? I mean, you'd be out of your mind not to do that.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd add to that list is build that business around you and your strengths, right? Even though everyone and their dog is doing it that way, if that way doesn't work for you, don't do that. Like for a while, there's always the thing of do you put your pricing online or do you not put your pricing online? And like every year it kind of goes back and forth. Like, oh my God, put up your prices, and then oh my God, don't put up your prices, right? Yeah. And if you've been around for 10 years, you've seen that swing of do you publish your prices or do you do discovery calls? Like this huge thing. But for me, I'm an introvert, so I love teaching my students, but I don't love, right, but, I will do anything for my students, but the rest of the population I'm really not interested in.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be fielding phone calls, like, because that really interrupts my work. Right. And I'm teaching kids most afternoons, so then I have to do my phone calls at night, which takes time away from my family. So I don't want people calling me. So I put all my information up online. The only reason I want people to call me is say I want to hire you. Right. And yes, people sometimes call to chat, but most of the time they call me to hire me because everything they need to know is up on the website. Yeah. Because that's the way that works best for me. Like packages. I'm sure technology is caught up now that there's like super easy way to do packages, but it wasn't for me at the time. So I'm like, dude, I don't do that because that's too complicated. Yeah. So I've really tried to build it around what works for me and flexibility. Mm-hmm. That, when my daughter gets sick, I canceled classes that day and I'm home with her. And then my agreement with my students is if I cancel within 24 hours, I then give you that class at no charge. So then my Saturday would be making up those classes.
That's cool.
If they cancel within 24 hours, I charge them the full session because I made arrangements. Right. So and it's not that it happens all the time, but it happens, right? My daughter, we can never get through the winter without someone
at least something. Yeah.
Yeah. Something. Or the dog. Oh my God, I had to take the dog to the emergency vet, and I'm like, I'm like sending out emails, like mass emails to all my appointments that day. Sorry. We'll call. Can't make the session. Call you later. The dog's dropping dead in front of me, and I'm like, oh my God, I got it. Yeah. So life happens, and being able to build a business around the flexibility of your life. And I had my whole plan for this year, and my daughter has come up with some educational needs, which means right now she's in after school care because those hours between 3 and 5 are some of my busiest. Those are my hours that get filled in the most, and then I go at 5. Her up. Mm-hmm. Well, it turns out I now need to take her to tutors and teachers because she won't learn from me, of course. We cannot teach her children. So I am now taking her I am now at 3 o'clock, I'm done. So I have wiped out 50% of my available hours. So I'm now pivoting my business model because my old business model isn't going to work this year. Yeah. So I'm now like, okay, I got to I've got math videos. The SAT, bless their hearts, they explain the math videos in these nerdy math. I know how to solve the problem, and I watched. And it's not a video. Sorry. They don't even. How you do a math problem? You do out a math problem. Yeah. They don't even do that. They write a paragraph of text about the math problem. Oh, geez. And I know how to solve it, and I read the paragraph of text. I'm like, what are you? What? Like, what is this? So I went through the 464 questions. Ask me how I know how many there are.
Holy
and I created
cow.
videos for all of them because I kept doing it for my own kids. So I created my videos for all of the answers. And the SAT tells you how to solve the problem. Well, here's another story for you. If the problem is how to put an elephant in the box, and if you read the paragraph, they technically do tell you how to solve the problem. They tell you how to put an elephant in a box. But then when you hit the question about a giraffe in a box, nothing transfers, right? You're like, because they didn't emphasize that. So they technically tell you how to solve the problem, but they don't give you the larger context, like the fundamental basics here that talk about how to solve these sorts of problems. So in my explanations, I teach you how to put animals in containers. So whether you hit elephant in a box or giraffe in a refrigerator or a mouse in a shoe, you've learned the right approach. So it applies to multiple things. So the SAT is many things, but they're not teachers. So their explanations are horrible. So I created all these math explanations, and that's a good online supplement to my business that I will actually now want to sell to people who aren't my kids.
That's a great idea.
Aren't my students.
Yeah,
so
so
now
that
I'm
way
like,
you can...
oh my God, marketing, and oh my, so I've got to pivot this year and start learning about Facebook ads. And my husband works for Facebook. I'm like, dude, so
cool.
I'm like, okay, where are my Facebook ads? And my prioritization, he's like, yeah, it doesn't work like that. So I get no in and no benefit at all from him working for Facebook.
Well, that's horrible.
But as you know, the advantage with an online business and one that's built to, that's what my business is designed to do, that it pivots around the needs of my family. So instead of doing what I thought I was going to this year of seeing, 100 more kids, I'm going to be pivoting and seeing if I can sell my marketing or sell my math solutions, and seeing what that does as I will be with my daughter in the afternoons now.
Yeah, and that's a great point, and that is the freedom and the joy of owning your own thing, is because if it's an internal, change, like family-wise or something comes up personally, or of health or things, you can, if you design something strong, it's not that hard to pivot, in the sense that you already know who your audience is and you just find another way to serve them. When it's outside forces like industry changes, like, if Google completely just ripped out their current algorithm for SEO and replace it, which very few things happen at that extreme, but if it did happen and you're an SEO agency, then you have to say, okay, I have all these skilled people that are good at writing and technical things and software, but SEO is no longer viable. How do I shift this entire team to serve a new marketplace? But either way, you have the options, and like you said, the skills of entrepreneurship kind of compound, and our skill set grows and grows. And the way that you figured out how to solve, something you wanted to do but couldn't, like teaching in the inner city, like instead of you just walking away from it, you're like, oh well, I can focus on my strengths, but I can still contribute by giving to that.
Yeah.
And that's a charitable example, but just like now know how to be profitable, and that's going to apply across the board. It doesn't matter what you launch, you now know how to be profitable, which is just a learned skill, which that book is why that book is so important. It's just a skill.
And knowing, it takes the morality out of it, or anything.
Right.
Like, only good people are profitable and bad people aren't profitable. It's like, no, that's not it at all.
Just a model.
But the other thing and maybe this is just, after being in business for 10 years, that I now know, like, I was thinking this was going to be a high revenue year. It's not going to be a high revenue year. It's going to be a high learning year. Mm-hmm. And that's okay, because I know after high learning years, there will be high revenue years.
That's right.
So I'm going to be investing pretty heavily in SEO, because I'm like, I have a website, but I don't even I need to now be going into areas I just haven't been able to go into before, and I know it's gonna take investment of both time and money on my behalf for this year as I learn, and I'm gonna make mistakes, and I'm gonna make bad uses of money, and I know all that going in, so my books are not gonna look good this year, and that's okay, because what I hope to do is set that foundation that next year my books will look a whole lot better.
Right. And you said something interesting earlier about profitability that I just want to chime in on. Like you said, you shut down for a year, but the year before you did more revenue and were less profitable. And then this year you did, and then the past year you checked, you did, less revenue and are way more profitable. So for me, in my early 20s, I owned a multi-million-dollar construction company. I ended up losing it in the housing market crash, but I made less in that company than I make today. I make 2 or 3 times more, profitability and personal income out of like a quarter of the revenue.
Absolutely.
And it's it's so much easier.
Yes, and the book, Profit First is so good about showing you exactly. And now with my pivot this year, where right now I've got to go back to, again, I had my plan. Plan's now out the window. I got to go back to the plan and say, okay, wait, I've got to change stuff up. Mm-hmm. And look at what can I cut. what made sense as an investment a couple of years, what made sense at the time. But if I'm not running big revenue, do I need some of these expenses?
Right.
And where can I minimize that so that I'm freeing up revenue to invest? Yeah, exactly. That book is just so brilliant at forcing you, because usually, I mean, up to now, I take 50% profit. A dollar comes in, I take 50 cents.
Yeah.
So my business is forced to live on half of it. Well, now I've just cut 50% of my income. I mean, just right out the gate. So I'm like, okay, I don't know that my business can live on a quarter of my income now. I'm like, I don't know how to make that work. So I got to go back
and rework the model.
To bigger stuff to say, what can I let go of, and how can I reforce it to live on a quarter of his income, or do something else.
Yeah.
So it's all, there's always a new day, something new coming up. But it's fun, and I have. Again, I didn't mean to be an entrepreneur. I'm still amazed I'm an entrepreneur. And if I think fundamentally teaching is where it's at, because I think what everyone's doing, I mean, unless you have a widget and you're selling a widget, but I would say even in the art of selling your widget, you're teaching.
Yes.
So I think teaching is a fundamental skill that becomes more and more important in this new economy.
I could not agree more. Well, thank you so much, Stacey. This has been amazing. It's been fun having you on. I'm definitely having you back because there's more I want to talk to you about. But I try not to make my podcast interviews 3 hours long, which is what would happen if I. But thank you so much for being on.
Good for a run, right?
That's right.
Good, nice run out back.
Definitely.
So thank you so much. I've really enjoyed talking to you today.
Absolutely. So if people want to learn about you and work with you, or if they have, if they want to find out about your new product that's coming out, or have kids that need your help, what's the easiest way to work with you?
Perfect. If you have kids or know of kids who need help on the SAT, I have a blog with like 9 years of blog posts on it, tons of free resources, and I'm also available to work with you, and you can come find me at stellarscores.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Stacey. This has been a blast, and we'll definitely have you back soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to Today's Business Leaders with Gabe Arnold. Remember to subscribe on iTunes. For more information, visit todaysbusinessleaders.com.